I'm just an utterly ordinary convenience store owner. Yet the employees of the Orange Group across the street have been spreading rumors that I'm the scandalous boyfriend of their beautiful CEO. What no one ever expected was that the root of all this mess turned out to be a single braised egg. I've dealt with plenty of difficult customers in my life, but I never imagined I'd run into someone like her. That night, she showed up in a white business suit, her face icy as she questioned whether there was something wrong with my braised egg. I simply smiled and replied, "Would you like me to swap it for one that's a bit less salty?" Who would have thought that such a chokingly blunt response would become the opening shot in my battle with this domineering female CEO? Chapter 1. Whenever I think back on the night that changed my life, I always end up thinking about that damn braised egg. It was an utterly ordinary summer night. As usual, I was sitting in the convenience store my aunt had left me, half asleep behind the counter. The old electric fan on the counter spun weakly, squeaking and rattling as it turned. At 11:30 p.m., the commercial street outside was at its quietest. "Boss, is your braised egg spoiled or what?" The sudden accusation nearly startled me off my chair. When I looked up, I saw a woman in a white business suit staring at me coldly. Ever since the new office building opened nearby, plenty of elite white-collar workers had appeared in the area, but someone with an aura as overwhelming as hers was still rare. "That can't be," I replied. "Our braised eggs are famous far and wide for being famously terrible." She cut in, letting out a cold laugh. "Try it yourself." I took the braised egg from her hand. Before I could say anything, she added, "I suggest you taste the whole pot, so you don't end up poisoning other people." That remark made my temper flare instantly. Our braised eggs were my aunt's signature item, made with a recipe she'd used for 20 years. There had never been a problem. "Miss," I said, doing my best to keep smiling, "could you tell me exactly what you think is wrong with it?" "It's salty as hell." She frowned. "And the egg white has turned gray. Are you sure this hasn't been sitting around all day?" I couldn't help laughing. "Miss, is this your first time having 5-spice braised eggs?" "What are you implying?" "Our braised eggs use a special 5-spice recipe," I explained patiently. "As for the grayish egg white, that's because we use star anise and Sichuan peppercorns. It's completely normal." She froze for a moment, then stiffened her face again. "That still doesn't change the fact that it's way too salty." "Well," I rubbed my chin, "maybe you're not used to strongly flavored food. How about this? I'll change it for one that's less salty." "So you're saying I don't know how to appreciate food?" Her voice shot up an octave. "Let me tell you, I've eaten at more Michelin 3-star restaurants than you've ever even seen." I nearly burst out laughing. Comparing Michelin restaurants to convenience store braised eggs, now that was an interesting way of thinking. "Then how many stars do you think our braised eggs deserve?" I asked on purpose. Her face instantly flushed red. "Why, you're mocking me, aren't you?" "Not at all. Not at all," I said quickly, waving my hands. "I just think you're absolutely right. Our braised eggs really aren't worthy of a gourmet like you. How about this? I won't charge you for it. I suggest you stick to caviar and truffles at Michelin restaurants in the future." Maria, the part-time clerk in the shop, overheard this and struggled so hard to hold back her laughter that she ended up making a honking sound like a goose. The woman's expression grew even more dramatic. She pointed at me, her hand shaking with anger. "Why you? What kind of attitude is this? I'm filing a complaint. I'm reporting your store." "Sure," I said with a cheerful smile, pulling out the suggestion log from under the counter. "Just sign your name and leave your contact information. We'll definitely take it seriously. By the way, may I ask your name?" "Willow Lou." She stopped mid-sentence, shot me a vicious glare, and shouted, "Just you wait." She turned and left as soon as she finished speaking, her high heels striking the tiles with a crisp, rhythmic clatter. "Boss." Maria leaned over and whispered, "She looks like a big shot from the office building across the street." "Really?" I yawned. "Perfect then. Once her complaint goes through, I can close up early and go home to sleep." Who would have thought that careless joke would actually come true? Less than 10 minutes later, people from the health department showed up. "Boss Wong," the inspector in charge said awkwardly, "we received a complaint about your braised eggs." "That fast?" I glanced at the clock in surprise. "Our complaint calls dispatched instantly now." "Well, about that," the inspector hesitated. "It was President Liu from the newly opened headquarters of the Orange Group. She personally made the call." Damn, I'd really kicked an iron plate this time. I glanced toward the office building. The lights in the top floor office were still on. The inspection was extremely thorough, but in the end, of course, nothing was found wrong. As they were leaving, the inspector seemed to want to say something but held back before finally offering, "Boss Wong, just my personal advice, you might want to be careful lately. President Liu doesn't have the best temper." "Don't worry," I said with a smile as I walked them out. "If she comes again, I'll just say we're sold out of braised eggs." The inspector shook his head. "You might as well not open at all." I patted the shop door and laughed. "I'm kidding. This place is my aunt's life's work. If I stop opening, she'd crawl out of the nursing home just to scold me." After seeing them off, I was about to close up when I suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure moving upstairs. I looked up just in time to see a white silhouette quickly duck away from a top-floor window. Interesting. I smiled as I locked the door. Something told me this wasn't over yet, and if President Liu thought she could easily pin down a small-time shop owner like me, she'd seriously miscalculated. Maria, I asked while tidying up the counter, what do you honestly think about our braised eggs? Maria was organizing the shelves. She turned around and grinned. Boss, you want the truth? Go ahead. They're a bit salty. She stuck out her tongue, but I think that beautiful lady was even saltier. I burst out laughing. The night really was a bit salty, but I had a feeling the days ahead would be far more interesting. As for President Liu, just wait and see. I was curious to find out what kind of tricks she could pull. After all, on this street, I'd been around for years. I was practically the local kingpin. Maybe not salty enough, but definitely slippery enough. Boss, so about tomorrow's braised eggs? Maria asked. Cook them as usual, I said, putting the last empty box under the counter. But what? I gave her a mysterious smile. Add a bit more salt. By the time I got home, it was already 1 in the morning. Lying in bed, I suddenly remembered something my aunt used to say. George, running a convenience store isn't about making money. It's about making things convenient for every customer. Sorry, Auntie, I muttered to myself. Your well-behaved nephew might be picking a fight with someone. That said, President Liu was actually kind of interesting, especially when she was furious. That expression reminded me of an easily angered ragdoll cat I once kept. Whatever. Time to sleep. I had to get up early tomorrow to prepare boxed meals. No idea whether President Liu would come looking for trouble again. If she did, the corner of my mouth curved upward unconsciously. Then we'll see who wins. Outside the window, the office building lights were still on. I'd bet President Liu was plotting how to deal with me. Interesting. Really interesting. Chapter 2. At 7 in the morning, I had just placed the freshly braised eggs into the warming cabinet when Maria came running in, panting. Boss, this is bad. That President Liu brought people with her. I leisurely wiped my hands. So what if she did? What? Is she going to tear the shop down? No sooner had I finished speaking than Willow Liu walked in with 2 others. She had changed into a black business suit today and looked even more imposing than she had the night before. Mr. Wang, she said, lifting her chin slightly, I'm here to conduct a routine hygiene inspection. I laughed outright. President Liu, the health department inspectors just left last night. Are you planning to wear us down with back-to-back inspections? That was a government inspection, she replied coldly. This is an inspection by the property management department of the Orange Group. According to the lease agreement, we have the right to carry out routine inspections of shops within our jurisdiction. Well damn, turns out this whole street was managed by her company. Still, she was being a little too eager. Go ahead, I said, gesturing politely. This is a great chance for you to see how our braised eggs are made. Willow ignored me completely and turned to the people she'd brought along. Check every corner, especially the back kitchen and the storage room. For the next hour, I watched as they turned the shop upside down. Maria was on the verge of tears, but I just sat behind the register, calmly playing on my phone. Mr. Wang, Willow said when the inspection was finally over, walking over with her notepad. Your storage room has a blocked fire exit. The exhaust fan in the back kitchen needs cleaning, and the temperature records for the warming cabinet are incomplete. These are all serious safety hazards. Oh, I put my phone down and looked at her. President Liu, would you like a cup of coffee? She froze. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said, I replied, pulling a thermos out from under the counter. It's still hot. I brewed it myself. No need, she rejected flatly. I suggest you deal with these issues first. President Liu, I interrupted her. Do you know how long this shop has been open? What does that have to do with the inspection results? 20 years, I said, standing up and strolling over to the storage room door. The layout of this storage room hasn't changed in 20 years. When it passed the fire safety inspection back then, you were probably still in elementary school. As I spoke, I opened the storage room door and continued. The blockage you're talking about, do you mean this shelf obstructing the fire exit? That's right. Would you like to take a look at how this shelf is designed? I lifted the dust cover, revealing a specially installed set of rollers underneath. It can be pushed aside instantly. That's so the passage can be cleared in 1 second during an emergency. This design was done under the guidance of the fire brigade back in the day. Willow's expression turned a little awkward, but she quickly tightened her face again. Then what about the exhaust fan and the warming cabinet? Maria, I called out. Bring the morning inspection records. Maria hurried over with a folder. I flipped it open to the latest page. The warming cabinet temperature records you mentioned are right here. Starting from 6 a.m. Recorded once every hour. As for the exhaust fan, I glanced at my watch. Every Monday at 8 in the morning, the cleaning lady comes to wash it. If you wait another 20 minutes, you can watch the entire cleaning process yourself. Willow Liu's face shifted between pale and flushed. The 2 people behind her looked just as embarrassed. Since President Liu is so concerned about how our shop is doing, I said with a pleasant smile, would you like to try today's freshly braised eggs? I deliberately used a bit less salt. No need. She grabbed her bag. We'll compile the inspection results and notify you. Watching her storm out, Maria snickered. Boss, you're really evil. That's called fighting fire with fire. I shrugged. But this definitely isn't over. Sure enough, from that day on, Willow came by the shop almost every single day to find fault. Trash sorting not detailed enough, dust and sanitary blind spots, price tags with fonts that were too small. I couldn't even be bothered to count how many excuses she'd used. Fortunately, I'd prepared for this long ago. Every regulation, every record, every checklist I could possibly think of, I had them all neatly organized. Every time she came looking for trouble, I'd slap the corresponding documents right in front of her. The boss is amazing, Maria would sigh every time she witnessed one of these scenes. How do you have everything ready? That's business, I said while fiddling with the cash register. You plan ahead. Besides what? Nothing, I smiled. Do you think President Liu's lipstick color looks nice today? Huh? Maria looked confused. I didn't even notice. Wait, boss, why are you noticing that? I didn't answer, just lowered my head and continued arranging the shelves. To be honest, I didn't know why I'd noticed either. Maybe it was just that today's shade really suited her. This routine went on for nearly a week, until that unexpected incident one afternoon. That day was especially hectic. Maria had taken leave to attend class, and I was completely swamped on my own. It happened to be lunchtime for the office building, and the shop was packed with white-collar workers buying boxed lunches. Right then, Willow showed up again. Mr. Wong, she said, standing amid the crowd and speaking in her usual commanding tone. We've received a complaint saying your shop discriminates against customers. I was busy making change for a customer and didn't even look up. President Liu, look at all these people. How would I even have the time to discriminate? It's discrimination against office building employees versus ordinary customers. Her voice rose a few notches. Someone reported that your attitude toward office workers is very poor. That actually made me laugh. President Liu, aren't you mistaken? Our shop staff practically work here for the office workers' discount coupons. What discount coupons? She frowned. I pulled out a stack of pink coupons from under the counter. Exclusive for office building employees. Buy a boxed lunch, get a free drink. We've been running this promotion for a month. You didn't know? The white-collar workers in line all raised the coupons in their hands. Willow's expression froze instantly. Then why didn't I get a coupon? She asked subconsciously. You're the CEO, I said with a grin. I figured you wouldn't care for such small perks. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Willow Liu's face flushed red as she turned to leave. President Liu, I called out. Your coupon. She shot me a glare but still took it. I noticed her fingers trembling slightly. Today's limited boxed lunch is braised egg rice, I added. I specially made a low-salt version. She didn't say a word, clutching the coupon as she hurried off. But I swear, at the moment she turned around, I saw the corner of her mouth lift ever so slightly. After the last customer left, I was about to tidy up the counter when I noticed something pink in the corner. I picked it up. It was a coupon. On the back, someone had scribbled a line in small print. Limited edition tastes awful. I couldn't help laughing. It seemed this President Liu was actually pretty interesting, maybe even a little cute, at least more than I'd expected. The only question was what excuse she'd come up with tomorrow to pick another fight. After all, it wasn't even off work yet. She might already be sitting in her office plotting how to deal with me. Thinking that, I glanced toward the office building. Sunlight glinted off the glass curtain wall, reflecting a blinding sheen. What kind of scene was unfolding right now in that top-floor office? Chapter 3. On Monday morning, just as I opened the shop, Maria leaned in with a mysterious look on her face. Boss, I've got some important intel. I was arranging drinks on the shelf and asked casually, what kind of intel that looks so secretive? I heard President Liu is holding a morning meeting in the office building today. Maria lowered her voice. Seems like she's going to announce some major decision. My cousin works there as a cleaner. She said the meeting room was piled with documents. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. Sounds like we're about to be in big trouble. Boss, how can you still be smiling? Maria stamped her foot anxiously. What if she's planning to go after our shop? Think about it, I said unhurriedly. A big conglomerate CEO spending her days picking fights with a tiny shop like ours. If word gets out, who do you think would look worse? Maria blinked. But, all right. I patted her shoulder. Go record the warming cabinet temperature. Today's limited lunch is curry beef rice. Remember to heat it up early. As soon as Maria walked away, a commotion broke out at the entrance. I looked up to see Willow walking in with several people. She was wearing a navy blue suit today, looking especially sharp, though her expression was far from pleasant. Mr. Wong, she got straight to the point. We've received multiple customer complaints stating that your boxed lunches pose food safety risks. Really? I smiled. Could you be more specific? Some customers reported feeling unwell after eating your boxed lunches. She pulled out a document. These are the complaint records. I took a look. President Liu, were all these complaints received through your property management department? That's right. You've worked hard, I said as I handed the document back. But I'd suggest these customers file their complaints with the health department instead. After all, your property management doesn't have law enforcement authority, does it? Willow's expression shifted. I'm warning you, if similar issues occur again, if there really is a problem. I cut her off. I suggest you call the health department right now for an inspection. Perfect timing too. I've just started preparing today's lunches. Would you like to watch the process? She froze for a moment, clearly not expecting that. Come on. I gestured. The back kitchen has already been disinfected according to regulations. You and your colleagues are welcome to take a look. As I spoke, I took out several disposable shoe covers. By regulation, you need to wear these to enter the kitchen. Willow glanced at the shoe covers, then at her high heels, looking conflicted. Or you could wait outside, I said considerately. Once the first lunch is ready, you can inspect it on the spot. She hesitated, then finally nodded. Fine, I'll wait here. For the next hour, I focused on preparing the lunches in the kitchen, occasionally answering questions from Willow's colleagues. By the time the first boxed lunch was ready, it was almost noon. President Liu, I said, placing the lunch in front of her. Please inspect it. She opened the box and carefully checked each dish. Finally, she frowned. Why is there no braised egg? Didn't you say it was too salty? I said deliberately. I switched it out for tamagoyaki. Her face suddenly turned red. Who said that was for me? I looked innocent. Aren't you here to inspect? I can't very well let you inspect on an empty stomach, can I? The people around us couldn't help laughing. Willow shot me a glare, picked up her chopsticks, and took a bite. Well, I asked. SOSO, she said, putting the chopsticks down, but at least it's better than the braised egg. Then will you come again tomorrow? Of course, she blurted out, then immediately realized her slip. I mean, the inspections will continue. Watching her hurry off with her entourage, I couldn't help laughing. This President Liu was really quite an interesting person, but I didn't laugh for long because the very next day, I discovered a new sign had appeared outside the shop. Orange, Group Shop Hygiene Inspection Bulletin Board. This is bad, Maria said, staring at the sign. It'll be even easier for her to nitpick now. But I noticed something else. Maria, look at where that bulletin board is placed. What about it? According to fire safety regulations, nothing is allowed in that spot, I said with a grin, because this is a mandatory fire exit pathway. Maria suddenly understood. Then doesn't that mean, go get the morning inspection records, I said, and while you're at it, heat up some coffee for me. Half an hour later, Willow showed up at the shop entrance right on time. Mr. Wong, she said, pointing at the bulletin board, starting today, we'll be regularly posting inspection results here. No. What? I said no. I took out a document. According to fire safety regulations, nothing can be placed here. Take a look, this is official documentation from the fire department. Willow took the document and skimmed through it. Her expression turned complicated. Then we'll put it somewhere else. Nowhere on the storefront will work. I shrugged. They're all fire access routes. You know, safety first. She bit her lip, thought for a moment, then said, then we'll put it inside your shop. That won't work either. I shook my head. All interior wall space is designated advertising space under the lease agreement. If you want to use it, you'll have to pay market rates. She stamped her foot in frustration. You're deliberately making things difficult. I wouldn't dare, I said with a smile. I'm just following the law. By the way, want a cup of coffee? No. That's a shame. I picked up the coffee on the table. I made this one specially. Added some. Added what? She asked suddenly. Caramel. Her eyes lit up for a split second before she quickly stiffened her face again. I don't want your coffee. Watching her storm off, I took a sip. Truth was, I hadn't added any caramel at all, but judging from her reaction, it seemed I'd guessed her preference correctly. What I didn't expect was that later that afternoon, I'd run into Willow in the alley behind the convenience store. I was sorting out discarded cardboard boxes when I heard voices coming from the alley. I peeked over, and there she was, squatting in the corner, holding something in her hand. Meow. A cat's cry sounded. That's when I realized she was feeding a stray cat. What surprised me even more was how gentle her smile was. The usually high and mighty President Liu looked completely different in that moment. Hungry, she said softly. Here, I brought this just for you. Watching the scene, it suddenly clicked why she was always so picky about the shop's cleanliness. Turns out this tough, domineering CEO was a cat lover. Just as I was thinking that, the cardboard boxes at my feet toppled over. Willow was startled and sprang to her feet. Why are you here? Her face flushed bright red. This is the alley behind my shop, I said helplessly. President Liu, on the other hand, why are you back here feeding a cat? I'm not. She quickly hid the can of cat food behind her back. I'm here to inspect sanitation. All right, I said, holding back a laugh. Go ahead and inspect. I know this cat though, it comes by every day. Pretty cute. She hesitated, then asked quietly, really? It comes often. I nodded. Yeah, we can't keep cats in the shop, so we just put some food out here in the alley. You feed it too? Her eyes lit up again. Then she became cautious. It's not expired food, is it? Of course not. I laughed. Don't believe me? Ask it. The cat food I give it is imported. She looked at me, clearly trying to decide whether I was telling the truth. The big orange cat, however, cooperated perfectly and rubbed against my pant leg. Fine, she huffed. At least you've got a conscience. But this place is too dirty, it needs cleaning. Sure, I said. If you don't mind, you can help clean it tomorrow. Who would help you? She turned to leave, but halfway down the alley she stopped and turned back. That cat, don't mistreat it. Don't worry, I called after her. I'm not a bad guy. After she'd gone, I crouched down and patted the orange cat. So, did I just uncover your CEO's little secret? The cat meowed lazily and let out a long yawn. Back in the shop, I found Maria looking troubled. Boss, we're running low on coffee beans. Should I order more? Yeah, I thought for a moment, then added, and get extra caramel-flavored syrup. Huh? Maria looked confused. But don't most of our customers prefer Americanos? I just smiled and said nothing. Some things were better known by as few people as possible. Still, I found myself oddly looking forward to tomorrow's inspection. Who knew what excuse President Liu would come up with next to pick a fight? Chapter 4. I've always considered myself a pretty smart guy, at least. In my back and forth with Willow, I'd never really taken a serious loss, but this time, I might have been a little too confident. It all started that morning. I was in the back alley topping up food for the big orange cat when Maria came rushing over, completely out of breath. Boss, this is bad, she panted. President Liu is really coming after us. What happened? They're opening a brand new convenience store in the office building. Maria lowered her voice. I heard it'll be directly operated by the Orange Group, and it's going to be right in the first floor lobby. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, looks like President Liu wants to go head on. Boss, what do we do? Maria paced anxiously. They'll definitely be cheaper than us. All the customers will go over there. I rubbed my chin. The question is, does President Liu actually understand how to run a convenience store? As I was speaking, the big orange cat suddenly stood up, its tail sticking straight up. Following its gaze, I saw Willow standing at the entrance of the alley. Mr. Wong. She walked over. I'm here to tell you something. No need, I said with a smile. The office building's opening a convenience store, right? She froze for a moment, then said, seems you already know. As the property manager, we're obligated to notify you in advance. Notify? I asked deliberately, not warn. Think whatever you like, she said, lifting her chin. Either way, starting next month, you won't be the only convenience store on this street. Sounds great, I replied. Competition drives progress. Willow clearly hadn't expected me to stay so calm. She frowned, studying me. You're not worried? Of course I am, I said, squatting down to keep feeding the cat. But worrying won't help. Might as well think about how to respond. She snorted. You'd better think it through. She turned to leave, but halfway down the alley, she glanced back at the big orange cat. Don't worry, I said to her. Even if the shop can't stay open, I'll still take care of it. Who's worried about that? Her face flushed red as she hurried away. Watching her back, an idea suddenly popped into my head. Maria. I turned to her. What do you think is the most important thing about a convenience store? Low prices. No. I shook my head. Understanding your customers. Over the next week, I started seriously studying the foot traffic in the office building. Every morning while preparing boxed lunches, I adjusted side dishes according to different departments' eating habits. During lunch breaks, I recorded each customer's choices. In the afternoons, I even added late-night snacks tailored for people working overtime. Boss, aren't you pushing yourself too hard? Maria shook her head at how busy I was. Know your enemy and know yourself, and you'll never lose a battle, I said while organizing the data. Finally, the day before the new store's opening, I made a bold decision. Maria, tomorrow we're cutting all prices by 20%. Huh? Maria's eyes widened. Won't we lose money like crazy? Relax, I said with a smile. I've got a plan. The next morning, the new store opened as expected. The entire first floor lobby was decked out with decorations, plastered with opening sale ads. I stood at my shop entrance and took a look. Their prices were nearly 30% lower than ours. President Liu really went all in, I muttered. But soon, the morning rush hit. Seeing the new store, office workers naturally rushed over to check it out. Our shop became noticeably quieter, but by lunchtime, things began to change. Boss, one Omuris, please. A regular walked in. Not going to check out the place across the way, I asked. They're quite a bit cheaper. So what if they're cheap? He shrugged. Their lunches are factory delivered. How can they compare to your freshly made ones? Similar conversations played out again and again. Though the new store was cheaper, our loyal regulars barely left. Some even came specifically to ask, Boss, why don't you have braised eggs anymore? They've got them over there, I said with a grin. Want to try? No thanks. He waved it off. I still prefer your flavor. That afternoon, Willow suddenly showed up in the shop. Mr. Wong, she said, her tone carrying a hint of smugness. Business doesn't seem too great, does it? Not bad, I replied, pointing at the cash register. At least I'm not losing money. Oh really? She let out a cold laugh. Then do you know what the store across the street made this morning? No, I said, but I do know their costs. What do you mean? I pulled out a list. Factory-delivered boxed lunches cost about 8 yuan each on average. You sell them for 15. It looks cheap, but we make ours ourselves. Even though our cost is 12 and we sell them for 20. They're still more popular. She froze for a moment. How do you know all this? After doing this for so many years, I smiled. These numbers are practically burned into my brain. President Liu, your convenience store won't last long. And what makes you so sure? She asked. Because you don't understand your customers, I said. A convenience store isn't a supermarket. Service is what matters most. Cheap doesn't automatically mean popular, especially in an office building area like this. Willow fell silent. I expected her to get angry, but instead she looked at me thoughtfully. Then she suddenly asked, so what do you think is the most important thing for a convenience store? Adaptability, I replied. You have to constantly adjust to customer needs. For example, I pointed at the new sign posted by the door. After 8 p.m. all items 20% off. Why? I continued. Because at that hour, it's all people working overtime. They're the ones who need discounts the most. She stared at the sign for a long moment, then turned and walked out. I thought that was the end of it, until the next morning. Boss, Maria rushed in holding her phone. You need to see the news. I took the phone from her and nearly lost my footing. Orange Group announces acquisition of the nation's largest convenience store chain. Deal valued at tens of billions. Mr. Wang. Willow's voice came from the doorway. Thank you for the advice. Only then did I realize that my analysis had actually inspired her. This woman's business instincts were far sharper than I'd given her credit for. But, she added, I still think your braised egg is too salty. Watching her walk away in high spirits, I couldn't help finding it a little funny. I'd meant to teach her a lesson, yet somehow, I'd helped her spot an entirely new business opportunity. Boss, Maria asked worriedly, are we done for? It's fine, I said, patting the big orange cat on the head. At least there's one thing they'll never be able to copy. What's that? I pointed toward the back kitchen. Sincerity. Besides, I smiled and glanced in the direction of the office building. Some people may talk tough, but they're soft on the inside, and a lot cuter than I expected. The big orange cat let out a meow, as if agreeing with me. But I knew this showdown was only just beginning. At the very least, when it came to service and flavor, I wasn't going to lose. And to be honest, seeing Willow's business talent on display actually made me a little excited. This woman was far more interesting than I'd imagined. The only question was, what move would she make next? Chapter 5. Lately, I've been feeling a bit unsettled. Not because of competition from the new store across the street, but because Willow has been too quiet. Ever since the convenience store acquisition deal, she hasn't come by to nitpick even once, for a whole week. That kind of abnormal calm made me uneasy. Boss, Maria leaned in mysteriously. Do you know what people in the office building have been talking about lately? I was sorting through the account books. What gossip now? They say the Orange Group is planning a comprehensive renovation of this entire street. She lowered her voice. Something about turning it into a high-end commercial district. My hand jerked, and I nearly spilled my coffee. Where did you hear that? My cousin, Maria replied. She was cleaning a meeting room yesterday and saw a document on the table. I put the account book down and thought about how credible this sounded. If it was true, then Willow's recent silence suddenly made sense. Just then, David pushed the door open. The office building's head of security had been coming by often for coffee lately, but today his expression was unusually serious. Boss Wang. He glanced around and asked quietly, got a moment to talk? I led him to a seat in the corner. Captain David, what's so serious? Well, he lowered his voice. The company's been holding meetings about renovating the block. I think you might want to prepare yourself in advance. What exactly is going on? I don't know the details, he said hesitantly, but I've heard they want to upgrade the overall commercial profile. Some older shops might need to be adjusted. My heart sank, combined with what Maria had said. This was almost certainly real. I poured him a cup of coffee. Thanks for the warning, Captain David. But this shop might not be so easy to shut down. Why not? I smiled faintly. Do you know why I run a convenience store? Because before my aunt passed away, she said this street needed a shop that stayed open 24 hours so people working late could get a hot meal. Someone heartbroken could buy a bottle of beer, and those rushing deadlines could grab a cup of coffee to stay awake. David took a quiet sip and asked, so you're holding on to an ideal? Not really an ideal. I shook my head. Just, some things feel worth holding on to. He looked at me for a moment, then suddenly said, actually, President Liu isn't a bad person. I know. I shrugged. She just took over the family business. She's eager to prove herself. You see things clearly, David said as he stood up. Still, be careful. Lately, a lot of professional teams have come in. Their methods aren't aimed at individuals. After he left, I leaned back in my chair, lost in thought. If the Orange Group really intended to overhaul the whole street, could a small shop owner like me stand against it? Just then, the shop door opened. I looked up, and there was Willow. She was wearing a beige trench coat today, looking far less sharp-edged than usual. Mr. Wong, she said in a formal tone, this is a commercial rectification notice. I took the document and skimmed through it. The notice stated that the area around the office building would undergo a commercial upgrade, and all shops were required to complete both hardware and service upgrades within 1 month. What are the specific requirements? I asked. The detailed standards will be issued soon, she said. But basically, everything has to meet the standards of a high-end commercial district. I smiled and asked her, President Liu, aren't you forgetting one thing? What? This shop is my aunt's private property, I said. It's not leased from your company. What authority do you have to demand renovations from me? She froze. But this is our commercial district. We have the right. You have the right to manage your own properties. I cut in. But when it comes to privately owned property, the only way you can regulate it is through administrative channels, fire safety, sanitation, things like that. Willow bit her lip, clearly not having considered this angle. So, I said, handing the document back to her, the renovation issue is going to need some serious discussion. You. Her face flushed with anger. Do you think this can actually stop the renovation plan? Of course not, I said with a smile, but at least it'll make you put in a bit more effort. She shot me a glare and turned to leave, but just as she reached the door, she suddenly stopped. That cat in the back alley. Don't worry, I said. I'll take good care of it. Her back stiffened noticeably before she hurried off. After she left, I let out a sigh. I knew full well this trouble wouldn't be so easy to resolve. If the Orange Group really wanted to overhaul this street, they had plenty of ways to make my life difficult. Boss, Maria asked worriedly, are we really not going to renovate? Of course we are, I said with a grin, just not by their standards. Huh? I pointed at the sign above the shop entrance. Look, that sign's been there for 20 years. It's about time we replaced it. Maria blinked. Boss, you're not thinking of... That's right, I said. If we're going to renovate, we might as well make it interesting. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to an old friend, a college buddy who worked at a construction firm. He should be able to help me come up with a solid plan. When I was closing up that night, I ran into Willow again in the back alley. She was squatting there, feeding the big orange cat. It's pretty late, I said, not heading home. She looked startled and quickly stood up. I was just passing by. Oh, I pointed at what she was holding. So that can of premium cat food just happened to fall onto the ground. Her face instantly turned red. You, mind your own business. By the way, I said, glancing at the orange cat, do you know what it likes to eat the most? What? She asked reflexively. Braised eggs, I said with a grin, the kind without any salt. She paused, then laughed. So your overly salty braised eggs are so bad that even cats won't eat them? Not necessarily, I replied. At least some people eat them and still come back to pick fights. Her smile froze. She glared at me. Just you wait. Once the renovation plan comes out, we'll see if you can still laugh. Watching her storm off, I suddenly felt that this showdown might turn out to be pretty interesting. She might have money and power, but on this street, I had 20 years of history and attachment. I really wondered what kind of expression she'd make when she saw my renovation plan. Chapter 6. When people talk about Willow, everyone who knows her says the same things. Dominant, arrogant, hard to get along with. But an unexpected discovery that day let me see a completely different side of her. It was a gloomy, rain-soaked morning. I was arranging the shelves when Maria suddenly ran in, laughing so hard she was practically doubled over. Boss, you'll never guess what I just saw. I asked casually. What's so funny? President Liu. She lowered her voice, locked herself out of her own office yesterday. My hands paused mid-motion. What happened? My cousin told me, Maria said mysteriously. She was working late last night, stepped out to take a call, and the door auto-locked. In the end, it was the cleaning lady who helped her get back in. I couldn't help laughing. That could happen to anyone. Oh, that's not all. Maria got even more animated. Do you know why people in the office building call her the Instant Noodles President? Instant Noodles President. Because she's always eating instant noodles in her office, Maria said. And every time, she splashes the soup all over her clothes. My cousin says the cleaning department's dry cleaning bill every month just for her. All right. I cut her off. Just focus on your work. Even so, I couldn't stop myself from picturing it. The usually high and mighty President Liu, clumsily eating instant noodles. The image made her seem a lot more adorable. That afternoon, the rain came down even harder. I was debating whether to close early when the shop door suddenly swung open. Willow stood there, completely drenched, water dripping from her hair. When she saw me, she froze for a moment, then turned as if to leave. Wait, I called out quickly. The rain's pouring. Come in and take shelter first. She hesitated, probably too soaked and miserable to refuse, and finally stepped inside. I pulled a clean towel from under the counter and handed it to her. Dry off. Thanks, she said quietly. When she took it, I noticed her hands were trembling. Want a cup of hot coffee? I asked. Just brewed. She nodded, then quickly added, with caramel. Got it. I smiled. I remember your taste. As I brought the coffee over, I caught a whiff of instant noodles. Apparently, the damp patches on her clothes weren't just from the rain. Working late again today? I asked casually. A project deadline, she said, tearing open another sugar packet and dumping it into the cup. I couldn't help saying, that's a bit much sugar. Not great for your health. That's none of your business, she snapped, then immediately lowered her head. Besides, I don't even drink coffee that often. Right, I said, holding back a laugh. You prefer instant noodles? She froze. Why you? How do you know? The whole office building knows. I shrugged. But I'm curious, why doesn't the CEO of the Orange Group just order takeout? Her face flushed red. I like instant noodles. Is that not allowed? Of course it is, I said. But if you ever want something different, I've got. No need. She cut me off. I don't want to eat anything you make. The words had barely left her mouth when her stomach betrayed her with an unmistakable growl. I held back a laugh and asked, you sure you don't want any? I just made curry beef rice. It's still hot. She bit her lip, her eyes drifting involuntarily toward the kitchen. Yet she stubbornly said, I'm not hungry. All right then, I said, turning toward the kitchen. Guess I'll eat it myself. Wait, she suddenly called out. I'll have one, but not because I'm hungry, just to check your shop's hygiene conditions. When I brought the food out, I saw her secretly teasing the big orange cat curled up on a chair. Hearing my footsteps, she quickly pulled her hand back and pretended to be scrolling through her phone. Eat it while it's hot, I said, setting the plate in front of her. Don't worry, I didn't add any chili. She froze for a moment. How did you know I can't eat spicy food? Last time you were inspecting the lunches, you deliberately pushed the spicy chicken aside, I said. So I figured you couldn't handle spice. She took a bite, and her eyes suddenly lit up. It's okay. I just smiled and said nothing. When this President Liu lied, even her ears turned red. By the time she finished eating, the rain had almost stopped. She stood up to leave, then suddenly remembered something and asked, how much? On the house, I said. Consider it a perk for the instant noodles president. Her face flushed instantly. Why, you're making fun of me again? I wouldn't dare, I said quickly, waving my hands. I just think anyone who can eat instant noodles with CEO-level dignity is pretty impressive. She shot me a glare, but the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. Tomorrow's inspection will be even stricter. Sounds good, I said with a grin. But before the inspection, want a boxed lunch? I can go lighter on the salt. Humph. She turned and left, but paused at the door and looked back. Today's curry wasn't bad. Watching her figure disappear into the rainy haze, I suddenly felt a warmth spread through my chest. So beneath that decisive, iron-handed CEO exterior, there really was just an ordinary girl. While clearing the dishes, I noticed a faint lipstick mark on her coffee cup. Looked like the shade she was wearing today. Boss, Maria suddenly popped up beside me. What are you smiling about? Nothing, I said, wiping the cup. Just thinking that some people have way too much contrast. You mean President Liu? Maria blinked. Because it kind of feels like you care a lot about her. Don't be ridiculous, I said, placing the cup back on the rack. I'm studying my opponent's weaknesses. Really? Maria asked slyly. Then why do you always prepare caramel syrup whenever you make coffee? I froze, not knowing how to answer. It was true, at some point, I'd started instinctively keeping the things she liked on hand. Low-salt lunches, extra coffee late at night when she worked overtime. But was all of that really just about studying an opponent? Outside the window, the lights in the office building were still on. I wondered what that clumsy CEO was doing right now. Chapter 7. In life, you're bound to run into some utterly absurd situations. For example, right now, the entire office building is spreading rumors about an affair between Willow and me. It all started that morning. As usual, I was in the back alley topping up food for the big orange cat when I suddenly heard an argument coming from upstairs. I looked up and saw Willow arguing with a sharply dressed man. I've told you countless times, I'm not interested in this kind of arrangement. Willow's voice carried clearly. Willow, you need to think this through, the man said. Cooperation between the two companies is very important to Orange. So what? Willow snapped. That means I'm supposed to sacrifice my personal feelings. This isn't a sacrifice, the man replied. President Ito's son has excellent qualifications in every aspect. You're close in age as well. That's enough. Willow raised her voice. My private life is not something the company gets to arrange. I was just about to quietly slip away when the big orange cat suddenly dashed up the fire escape. Willow spotted it and her expression shifted. Why are you here? The man followed her gaze and asked, isn't that the owner of that convenience store? Assistant Martin. Willow's tone suddenly turned hard. I've decided to reevaluate the renovation plan for the commercial street, especially that convenience store, I think. Why bring this up all of a sudden? Assistant Martin frowned. Willow, you wouldn't happen to be. What would I happen to be? She cut in coldly. I have my own plans for the convenience store. I don't need your input. With that, she turned and left. Assistant Martin stood there, giving me a thoughtful look before leaving as well. That accidental eavesdropping should have been the end of it, but life has a way of spiraling. By the next morning, rumors had already spread throughout the office building. The CEO of the Orange Group, President Liu, was having an affair with the convenience store owner, boss. Maria leaned over with a gossip-hungry expression. Do you know how they're telling it? I was preparing boxed lunches and replied flatly. I don't want to know. Maria ignored me completely and continued. They say President Liu rejected a blind date arranged by the group because of you, and that people have seen you two secretly meeting in the back alley. My hand jerked, and I nearly knocked over the soy sauce bottle. Secret meetings. We're feeding a cat. Okay. That's the key part, Maria said excitedly. They say President Liu hates cats, but for you, she's willing to feed one. If that's not love, what is? I rubbed my forehead. Your imagination is way too wild. Just then, David rushed in. Boss Wang, you'd better be careful lately. What's going on? The Ito Group, he lowered his voice, seems very unhappy about these rumors. They're negotiating a major project with Orange right now, and I waved my hand. Don't worry, I'll clear things up. But things were far from that simple. That afternoon, when Willow showed up at the shop, her expression was terrifyingly cold. Mr. Wang, she said icily, about these recent rumors, I want you to issue a statement to clarify things. I was just about to ask you to clarify. I shot back. Your people are the ones spreading the most outrageous nonsense. Outrageous. She let out a cold laugh. Then tell me, what exactly is there between us that's worth gossiping about? Looking at her stubborn expression, I suddenly felt irritated. Exactly, what is there between us? I said. Just a CEO and a convenience store owner, right? Her expression stiffened. What are you implying? Nothing, I said, turning to organize the shelves. I'll release a statement and make things clear. I promise I won't interfere with your future happiness with that, whatever his name, Ito guy. The shop suddenly fell silent behind me. After a long moment, I finally heard her voice, clenched through gritted teeth. George Wang, are you sick or something? I turned around and met her reddened eyes. She took a deep breath before continuing. I don't like that Ito guy at all. Isn't that just the company's arrangement? So I have to listen to the company, she snapped, her voice rising sharply. I've always had my own reasons for what I do. I don't need anyone else sticking their nose into my business. As soon as the words left her mouth, she seemed to realize she'd gone too far. She bit her lip and added in a much lower voice. Anyway, you wouldn't understand. I stood there frozen, watching her tremble with anger, and suddenly, something clicked, but she didn't give me a chance to speak. She turned and headed straight for the door. I instinctively tried to chase after her, only to be stopped by Assistant Martin, who had just walked in. Boss Wang, he said with a thin, insincere smile, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. What is it? Recently, we received a report, he said, pulling out a document. It claims there are serious fire safety hazards here. During the last inspection, perhaps something was overlooked. I looked at the densely packed clauses on the document and instantly understood what he was getting at. This was a blatant attempt to make trouble. Assistant Martin, I said with a smile, do you really think doing this will make President Liu happy? That's none of your concern, he replied, tucking the document away. Just prepare yourself for the inspection. Oh, and by the way, recently, the Ito Group has also shown interest in this street. If a different developer were to step in, who knows what might change? Watching his back as he left, I suddenly realized this farce might spiral into something much bigger. When I was closing up for the night, I saw the big orange cat again in the back alley. It was crouched there, as if waiting for someone. Looks like it's just the two of us now, I said, squatting down to pat its head. She probably won't be coming by anytime soon. The big orange cat let out a soft meow and tilted its head at me. Tell me, I muttered to myself, do I really not understand anything at all? The night grew deeper, and one by one, the lights in the office building went out. Only the top floor office remained lit. What was that stubborn, clumsy CEO thinking about right now? Chapter 8. The storm that night came fast and furious. I was just about to close up when a series of urgent knocks sounded from outside. When I opened the door, it was David. He was soaked through, his expression grim. Boss Wang, something's happened. What is it? The basement of the office building is flooding, he panted. The drainage system on the commercial street seems to be blocked. The archive room in the basement is about to be lost. My heart tightened. The drainage system on the street dated back to my aunt's time. It was old, and problems were bound to happen. I'd even reminded property management a few days ago to inspect it, but they hadn't taken it seriously. Where's President Liu? I asked. She's in the basement, David said. But property staff can't all be reached in time, and it's hard to mobilize a construction crew right now. I glanced at the torrential rain outside. I'll go take a look. When I reached the basement, the situation was even worse than I'd imagined. The water was already up to knee level. Several security guards were carrying files out, while Willow stood in the water directing them. You're here? She froze for a moment when she saw me. I know this area best, I said. If it's a drainage issue, I should be able to help. She pressed her lips together, said nothing, and simply nodded. After that misunderstanding, we hadn't spoken for a week. Where's the main inflow? I asked. Over here, she said, leading me to a corner of the wall. It seems to be seeping in from here. I examined the marks along the wall, asked a couple of old shop owners nearby, and quickly pinpointed the problem. It's this old pipe, I said, pointing to a spot. There should be a diversion valve here, but it hasn't been maintained in years. It's clogged. Then what do? We need to find the valve and open it, I said. But what? We'll have to go into the street-side manhole. I glanced at the pouring rain, and we'll need someone coordinating from inside. Willow immediately understood what I meant. I'll go with you. No. I shook my head. You stay here and direct things. Let Captain David. I said I'm going. She snapped stubbornly. This is my job. Looking at how determined she was, I suddenly felt a pang of sympathy. This woman always took everything onto herself. The rain kept getting heavier. Under umbrellas, we worked by the street-side drainage opening. Willow crouched beside me, holding a flashlight. Rainwater ran off the edge of the umbrella and soaked her shoulders, but she didn't seem to notice. Found it. I strained to turn the rusted valve. Tell them to check the basement water level. Before I could finish, the valve suddenly loosened. A powerful rush of water burst out. Willow was startled and stepped back, twisting her ankle. Careful. I instinctively reached out to support her, only for both of us to tumble into a puddle. We scrambled back up, soaked and miserable. I noticed she was trembling. Are you okay? Her voice shook. I think I twisted my ankle. Don't move, I said, crouching down to check it. It's pretty swollen. It's fine. She bit her lip. Let's finish dealing with this first. You're still trying to tough it out at a time like this. I sighed. Come on, I'll carry you. No. Be good, I said in a coaxing, almost childish tone. There's still a lot to clean up here. Standing like this will just slow things down. She hesitated, then finally climbed onto my back. She smelled faintly of perfume, mixed with the damp scent of rain. Back at the shop, I took out the first aid kit. Let me take a look. She stretched her foot out, still worrying about the basement. As I applied the medicine, I said, relax. The valve's open, the water level will go down gradually, and Captain David and the others are there. Nothing will happen. But, you're tired too. I cut her off. Rest for a bit. She was quiet for a while, then suddenly said, I'm sorry, HM. About a few days ago, she lowered her head. I shouldn't have been so impulsive. I couldn't help laughing. So, you're apologizing to me now? She looked up and glared at me, though her eyes were already red. I'm being serious. I know, I said softly, gently pressing her ankle. But why are you apologizing? I'm the slow one here. She froze for a second, and then tears suddenly spilled out. Hey, I panicked, scrambling for some tissues. Why are you crying now? Does it hurt that much? She shook her head hard, wiping her eyes. I'm just a little tired. Looking at her like that, I suddenly understood. This woman who always seemed so strong had actually been holding herself together the whole time. Every day she faced pressure from the company, endless business power plays. Even when it came to her feelings toward me, she didn't dare express them lightly. Willow, I said quietly, have you ever thought about why I've never agreed to move away? She looked up at me, tears still shimmering in her eyes. Because this isn't just a convenience store, I said. It's part of this street, part of a lot of people's lives. I paused and looked at the rain outside the window. And besides, it seems there's still someone who finds our braised eggs too salty. Her tears instantly welled up again. All right. I fumbled awkwardly, wiping her tears. At this rate, your makeup's going to be ruined. What do you know? She sniffed. It's waterproof. I laughed despite myself. So you're planning to cry for a long time? She huffed and gave me a light smack, but the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. Just then, her phone rang. It was Assistant Martin. Apparently the Ito group was demanding an emergency meeting. Her expression immediately tightened. I have to go. I'll walk you out. No need. She stood up, though her steps were still a little unsteady. I can handle company matters on my own. Watching her force herself to leave, a complicated feeling surged in my chest. Maybe the real test was only just beginning. As I packed away the first aid kit, I noticed she'd left behind a handkerchief. Embroidered on it was a cat, tilting its head, remarkably similar to the big orange cat in the back alley. This woman. I shook my head with a sigh, clearly afraid of cats. Yet she still embroiders one onto her handkerchief. The rain outside gradually eased, but I knew a bigger storm might be brewing. From David, I'd already heard that the Ito group was very interested in the commercial street, and the terms they were offering were far more generous than Orange's. I wondered if that stubborn woman was worrying about all this right now. I looked toward the office building. The lights on the top floor were still on, just like her unyielding personality. Whatever. I muttered to myself. I'll make her a bowl of ginger soup first, so she doesn't catch a cold. As for everything else, I believed she could handle it. After all, she was Willow, the willful, stubborn CEO who somehow made people unable to stop worrying about her. Chapter 9. That Monday morning, the office building was unusually lively because people from the Ito group had arrived, and quite a few of them at that. Boss, Maria came running over early in the morning, looking nervous. It looks like they're holding some kind of important meeting upstairs. I was brewing coffee and replied, yeah, I know. You're really not worried? She asked anxiously. Everyone says the Ito Group is offering way more than Orange if the redevelopment rights of the commercial street get transferred to them. I gently shook my head. In truth, I understood the seriousness of the situation better than anyone. David had already told me yesterday, the Ito Group not only wanted to fully redevelop the commercial street, but also planned to turn it into a high-end business district. Oh, right, Maria suddenly added. President Liu seems to have arrived especially early today. Is that so? I said, glancing out the window. You too, Maria hesitated. Are you still fighting? I smiled without answering. Ever since that rainy day, the dynamic between us had indeed become subtle. She still came by every day to buy coffee, but she no longer picked fights. Meanwhile, the big orange cat in the back alley still showed up on time every day, waiting for her to feed it. As I was lost in thought, the shop door was pushed open. Assistant Martin walked in, wearing a smile that was hard to read. Boss Wang, he said, waving the documents in his hand. There's a very important meeting going on today, about the future of the commercial street. Oh, I poured him a cup of coffee. How's the discussion going? Very smoothly, he replied, taking the coffee. The Ito Group's terms are extremely generous, to be honest. At this point, the transfer of redevelopment rights is practically a done deal. I slowly wiped down the coffee machine and asked, is that so? But, he lowered his voice, if Boss Wang is willing to cooperate proactively, we could offer you some compensation. For example, arranging a better spot for you in the new commercial district. Assistant Martin, I interrupted him. The coffee's on the house, but next time you want one, I suggest you come at a different time. He froze. What do you mean? I pointed at the clock on the wall. At this hour, the coffee might be a little salty. Assistant Martin's expression darkened. Boss Wang, I advise you to think carefully. This isn't something a small shop owner like you can influence. Of course I can't, I said with a smile, but there might be someone who cares. You mean Willow? He sneered. Even if she's the CEO, she can't go against the board's decision on this matter. Really? I looked at him. Then why don't you go say that in the meeting room? His expression stiffened. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello? George. Willow's voice came through the line. Are you free to come to the meeting room right now? I glanced at Assistant Martin. Yes, but bring your account books, she said, and prepare an extra cup of coffee. After hanging up, I turned around and made a caramel latte. Assistant Martin, I said, picking up the account books and the coffee. Care to come upstairs together? The atmosphere in the meeting room was heavy. Besides the senior executives of the Orange Group, there were several middle-aged men in suits, presumably representatives from the Ito Group. Willow was seated at the head of the table. When she saw me enter, she gave a slight nod. So this is Mr. Wang, said a middle-aged man wearing glasses. I've heard a lot about you. May I ask what Mr. Wang thinks of our acquisition plan? Sorry, I said with a smile. I'm just a small shop owner. I wouldn't dare comment on matters of this scale. Mr. Wang is being too modest. The man chuckled. As far as I know, your convenience store is a landmark on this street. A 20-year-old shop in such prime real estate, that's not something just anyone can pull off. I placed the coffee in front of Willow and said, just good luck, that's all. She took the coffee, glanced at the ledger, and said, why don't you show your ledger to President Ito? I handed it over. Just a heads up, this is my own bookkeeping. It might not be very professional. President Ito flipped through the ledger, his brow slowly furrowing. After a long moment, he looked up. Mr. Wang, this ledger of yours, what about it? I asked. You record some special expenses every month, he said, pointing at the pages. For example, repairing streetlights, cleaning sewers, and fixing benches. Aren't these supposed to be the property management's responsibilities? I shrugged. Just helping out the neighbors. No big deal. So, Willow suddenly spoke up. A large part of this street's infrastructure maintenance is actually being done by you. I wouldn't put it that way, I said with a smile. I just fix things when I see they're broken. After all, this street is basically like my home. President Ito looked at me thoughtfully. Mr. Wang, I wonder if you might be interested in. Sorry, Willow Liu suddenly interrupted him. President Ito, I think we should look at this first. She turned on the projector. A market research report appeared on the screen. These are the latest survey results, she said. Among office workers, 90% believe that convenience stores are the most important supporting facility. And among them, 85% say they prefer old neighborhood shops with a human touch rather than chain convenience stores. President Ito's expression darkened slightly. And what exactly does President Liu mean by that? My point is very simple, she said, leaning back. If we're going to renovate the commercial street, we should upgrade it while preserving its original character, not tear everything down and start over. But, and besides, she continued, Mr. Wang's convenience store is actually the best example. He's already been making some changes, such as She opened another file. This is a new storefront design he commissioned from an architect. It preserves the original style while improving many details. This is exactly the effect we're looking for. I froze. I hadn't even had the chance to show her this plan yet. How did she know about it? So, she said, sweeping her gaze around the room, I suggest the board reconsider the cooperation plan. Instead of starting from scratch, we can upgrade and renovate based on what already exists. Not only will the cost be lower, the results may be even better. The meeting room fell silent for a moment. In the end, President Ito was the first to speak. President Liu makes a valid point, but how exactly should we proceed? She glanced at me before speaking. Well, that depends on whether Mr. Wang would be willing to serve as our consultant. After all, you know this street better than anyone. I couldn't help but laugh. Happy to help, but what? The coffee has to be free. She shot me a glare. Don't push your luck. After the meeting ended, I was about to leave when Willow suddenly called out to me. Wait a second. What is it? She took a folder out of a drawer. This is for you. I opened it and saw the shop renovation plan I'd asked a friend to design. Only now it was covered in annotations. It was obvious she had gone through it many times. When did you get this? I asked. That day when it was raining. She said, a little embarrassed. I saw it in the drawer at your shop. I held back a laugh. So you were snooping? Who was snooping? She said, her face flushing. That was a routine inspection. All right, I said, raising my hands in surrender. A routine inspection. She glared at me, then quickly turned serious. About the consultant thing. I know, I said. Don't worry, I won't put you in a difficult position. She froze for a moment, her eyes suddenly reddening. Can't you at least let me finish? No need, I said with a smile. Anyway, your coffee's already been written into the ledger. Looking at her sulky expression, I suddenly felt incredibly happy. This stubborn woman had finally learned to protect the things that mattered to her in her own way. When I walked out of the office building, the sunlight was just right. I didn't know why, but the morning felt especially beautiful. Maybe it was because I had finally found a way to protect this street together with her. Chapter 10. The renovation of the commercial street began. Every morning, I could see the workers busy at their tasks. Unlike what I had worried about before, this renovation preserved the street's original character, only optimizing the details. Boss, Maria said as she organized the shelves, look at our new sign. It looks way better than before. I looked up. My aunt's handwritten sign had been carefully restored and now had a rainproof glass cover added. In the sunlight, the slightly crooked characters for Midnight Convenience Store looked especially warm. Oh, right, Maria said mysteriously. Guess who I saw today? President Liu. Hey, how did you know? I just smiled without answering. In fact, since early that morning, I'd noticed her pacing back and forth across the street several times. But every time she got close to the shop entrance, she would suddenly turn around and walk away. She seems like she's waiting for someone, Maria said. Do you think she's waiting for you? No, I said while adjusting the new coffee machine. She's been really busy with work lately, Maria pouted. From what I see, you two are both waiting for the other one to make the first move. I was about to say something when the shop door was suddenly pushed open. A woman in a white dress walked in. Welcome. I looked up and saw it was Willow. She wasn't wearing business attire today and looked much gentler. Well, she stood awkwardly at the entrance. I'm here for an inspection. The renovation is all under my supervision now. I asked her, holding back a laugh. What does President Liu still need to inspect? I'm here to check the renovation results, she said, her face flushing. As the client, I have the right to supervise construction quality. All right, I said, quickly putting on a serious expression. Would you like a cup of coffee first? She shot me a look but still sat down at the counter. Caramel latte. No sugar. How do you know I've been cutting down on sugar lately? I shrugged. Just a guess. You've been so busy, you have to take care of your health. She froze for a moment, lowered her head, and took a sip of coffee. Then she suddenly said, about that day, thank you. Which day? That, she hesitated. The day of the meeting. Oh, I smiled. No need to thank me. I didn't want to move away anyway. Why? Didn't I already say it? I looked at her. Someone thinks the braised egg here is too salty. Her face instantly turned red. Who said it was too salty? I was just stating a fact. Yes, I said, sliding a paper box toward her. That's why I specially adjusted the recipe for you. She opened the box suspiciously. This is braised egg, I said. A new recipe, guaranteed not salty. She picked one up and took a bite. Her eyes suddenly lit up. This flavor. It's the same as 20 years ago, I said. My aunt's original recipe. Later, because so many people said it was too bland, she changed it to the current taste. Why suddenly? Because. I leaned closer and lowered my voice. I realized someone likes it less salty. Even though this person always loves to nitpick and is a bit tsundere. Still what? Her voice unconsciously dropped as well. But she's worth me changing the recipe just for her. Her eyes suddenly reddened. How can you be so annoying? Yeah, I said with a smile. So annoying that you always have to come and find faults with me. That's just normal inspection. So are you still inspecting now? She bit her lip. Yes, I have to. And I'll need to inspect often in the future. Sure, I said, refilling her coffee. But next time, could you use a different excuse? What excuse? For example, I looked into her eyes. You want to drink coffee. You want to eat braised egg. Or, you miss me. Her face turned red all the way to her neck. Who misses you? I asked back. Then you just miss the coffee. You. She raised her fist to hit me, but suddenly stopped because the big orange cat had somehow jumped onto the counter and was rubbing against her hand. It seems to really like you, I said. She carefully reached out and stroked the big orange cat, asking, really? Of course, I said. Otherwise it wouldn't be waiting for you in the back alley every day. She froze for a moment before asking, how do you know I go there every day? Because I'm waiting there too. Her hand trembled slightly, and the big orange cat let out a dissatisfied meow. Do you think, I said, looking at the cat, that we should add a boss's wife to the shop in the future? Huh? After all, someone's always saying my braised egg is too salty, I said, turning to her. I think I should find someone to help me keep an eye on the flavor. I pointed around the shop. Look, now that the renovation is so nice, at least you'll have a decent place to sit when you come to find faults. She lowered her head. After a long while, she finally said, Then that depends on how you perform. Don't worry, I said with a smile. I guarantee I'll prepare non-salty braised egg for you every day. That's not what I meant. She stamped her foot. I know, I said, taking her hand. The road ahead, we'll walk it together. Her tears fell all at once. Why are you always what? I asked. Always making me cry. I gently wiped her tears away. Then how about I make you laugh from now on? Suddenly she bit my hand. If you dare bully me, I'll come and find faults every single day. Sounds good, I said, holding on to her. You can find as many faults as you want. Sunlight streamed in through the newly installed glass windows, falling over the two of us. The big orange cat lay lazily on the counter, its tail swaying back and forth. In that moment, I suddenly understood what my aunt had once said. The most important thing about running a convenience store isn't making money, it's making every customer feel that things are convenient. And for me, the greatest convenience of all was meeting her here. Oh, right. She suddenly looked up and asked, why did you name the shop Midnight Convenience Store? I paused. Because many people only need a convenience store late at night to buy some convenient things. Ah, Maria screamed from the side, covering her eyes. Stop talking. Willow's face instantly turned bright red, but the corner of her mouth couldn't help curling upward. Then I'll just call you the convenience store owner from now on. Suit yourself, I said with a smile. Anyway, there's plenty of time for you to change what you call me later.